Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some people.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 19th of September 2020, we look at legacy, L-E-G-A-C-Y, legacy. And today we ask a question to all of our listeners, and particularly our Vincentian listeners. And the question is, if you are the Prime Minister or a member of the government of St Vincent and the Grenadines, what will you like your legacy to be? We ask that question, and we ask you to answer it honestly. The Oxford Dictionary defines legacy as something left or handed down by a predecessor. It is with that definition in mind, and with the knowledge that legacy is a powerful afterglow of living, and that it is the way people see you and talk about you after your life, why we here on A View from the Outside have chosen to cover this topic today. On the 28th of May 2014, Maya Angelou, the great American poet and civil rights activist, died. 3 years following her death, Whitney McGowan, writing an op-ed in a publication called Close Up, stated that what makes her legacy so profound is that it transcended sex, race, class, and religion. And she went on to say, everyone can relate to Dr. Angelou's story. Looking back on her life, you can become overwhelmed with her accomplishments and contribution to the artistic community. Now, Maya Angelou was not a politician, a president, or a prime minister. However, it is clear that her work transcended those realms. And it is so heartening to hear such a glowing tribute pertaining to her legacy. So it is with that in mind that we ask all of you, the listeners, to answer the question honestly. If you are the Prime Minister or a member of the government of St Vincent and the Grenadines, what will your legacy be? Will your legacy be that you have overseen 2 decades of neglect of schools, clinics, hospitals, and other public infrastructure around the country? Will your legacy be that you have totally neglected the roads, especially the feeder roads up and down the country? Will your legacy be one where decadence has taken over the country, where moral standards and behavior are at their lowest ever, where shocking, repulsive behavior and offense to public decency is caused by those who are bestowed with high office and responsibilities, where serious crimes and violence have escalated out of control, where the number of murders out of a population of less than 110,000 people reached 40 or more in 1 year, where there are a number of unsolved murders, including the press secretary of your own regime, where the same press secretary who is said to have played a crucial role in helping your regime win elections, where citizens are shot down in broad daylight, including members from the legal profession, and where you have murders still unsolved. Will your legacy be that you were a regime or part of a regime which is blamed for the high-profile disappearance of dissenting voices, where people, including Mr. Jocelyn of Cane Garden, also known as the servant of the Lord, disappeared without a trace, and for whom it is said an official search has never been conducted? Will it be part of a regime where rape, domestic violence, and abuse against women and girls have skyrocketed beyond belief? Where an old man in government is recorded on tape having phone sex with a young female, and where the female had to flee the country for her safety while the old man continues in government in opulence and with arrogance and pomposity? Will your legacy be, or will you like your legacy to be, that you are involved in a system where Yogi Farrell, a young female Vincentian, was not given justice? Will it be part of a system where the power of the establishment and agents and enablers of the regime are said to have totally destroyed Yogi Farrell? Will you like your legacy to be one where you are accused of rape and sexual assaults on multiple occasions? Will you like your legacy to be one where you were seen as part of a regime which appeared not to be able to offer comfort and security, even to those who are close family members, to provide evidence against criminals, and where criminals are allowed to go free as a result of that? Will you like your legacy to be one where you are seen to be responsible for having caused severe rifts and division among the people of your country? Where you are seen as having cultivated hatred and fear among your people? Where you denigrate citizens and members of their family, even in the House of Parliament? Where you haul insults to members of your own people in the Vincentian diaspora? Will you like your legacy to be that you are part of a system where it is said by members of your own inner circle that justice has two faces? Will you like your legacy to be that you only pretended to care for the poor? Will you like your legacy to be that you only cared about the votes of the poor rather than about the genuine poverty which they experience? Will you want your legacy to be that you were part of a regime that passed a law and imposed an onerous tax on the people of the Grenadines, seemingly as a punishment for them having not supported your regime? Will you like your legacy to be that you were part of a regime that imposed VAT, value-added tax, on the most basic food items, making it extremely difficult for the poor to feed themselves? Will you like your legacy to be that while you boasted about poverty reduction, you refused to release the poverty assessment report, which is said to show vast increases in poverty and deprivation in almost every part of the country? Will you like your legacy to be that in a population of under 110,000 people, approximately 18% are on poor relief or public assistance? Will you like your legacy to be that you used poverty as a tool to appear to rescue the poor by putting them on poor relief or public assistance, when in fact your primary intention or motivation was to secure votes? Will you like your legacy to be that you bragged about having 6,000 plus people on poor relief or public assistance, as if that is a badge of honor in good governance? Will you like your legacy to be that you are part of a regime which is responsible for the economic stagnation in the country, with an average unemployment of 26% and rising, and youth unemployment of a whopping 50%? A regime which has left families without income, and where only families of a selected few are meant to have wealth, a regime which is said to have emasculated the majority of trade unions in the country, where the heads of those trade unions are said to be unable to effectively represent the rights of their members? Will you like your legacy to be one where you are said to have propped up a regime which refused to obey the Constitution, the highest law of the land? A regime which does not provide accountability to the Vincentian people as prescribed by the said Constitution? A regime which has spent Petrocarib money without the proper oversight of Parliament, money which the taxpayers and future generations are saddled with and have to repay. A regime which has not accounted for the spending of the construction of Argyle Airport. Will you like your legacy to be that you were part of a regime which constantly eroded and undermined the rule of law in the country? A regime which constantly disobeyed orders and judgments from the court? A regime which high-handedly takes away people's lands and ignores court rulings and refuses to pay to compensate them even years after the court ruled that they are to be compensated? A regime which seeks to control citizens by taking away their lands and leaves its citizens living in fear, wondering whose lands will they take away next? Will you like your legacy to be that you were part of a regime which employed agents and enablers to denigrate and disparage citizens because you and your regime believe that they did not support you? Will you like your legacy to be that you supported a regime that has been rife with corruption, one which attracted headlines such as St Vincent and the Grenadines is notorious for money laundering? Will you like your legacy to be part of a regime responsible for disrupting the lives of citizens by arresting them and having them wait for long periods of time and then releasing them without charge? Or even if they were charged, the charges were later discontinued against them? Vincentians, listeners, if you have answered no to any, some, or all of the questions asked, then it means that you have to take steps to save our country, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It means that you have recognized that such a legacy cannot be a good one. It means that with such legacy, you ought to feel ashamed and you must do everything you can to avoid it. It means that if you see some or all of those characteristics in those who are part of the regime in our country, then you must do all that you can to ensure that you end their reign and that the country is put back on track to have a legacy which we will all be proud of. A legacy where your government, our government, is trusted so much by the people so that the government can win or will have won all 15 seats in the general elections. A legacy which shows that your government has placed emphasis on jobs, 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 so that unemployment is reduced significantly. A legacy where youths will be employed and gainfully occupied. A legacy where the middle class will thrive again. A legacy of genuine land reform, where local farmers own land and develop immense independence. A legacy where your government ensures that farmers are guaranteed markets for their produce and where farmers are given the assurance of security and protection from thieves and predial larcenies. A legacy where genuine attempts are made to unify all of our people to achieve the aim of one nation, one people, one Vinci. With the upcoming general elections inching closer and closer in the country, we, on A View from the Outside, encourage everyone, we encourage all of you to have sober reflections. Seize the opportunity, make the right decision, and vote for a government which will build a legacy that we will all be proud of. As you do that, as we all do that, let us write our own legacy to rebuild St Vincent and the Grenadines, bearing in mind the words of author and businessman Gary Vaynerchuk, who said, I quote, "Your legacy is being written by yourself. Make the right decisions." Until next week, Randy and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page, A View from the Outside, and also visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne. Have a pleasant Saturday, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday and a productive week ahead as we all pledge to leave a legacy of quality to be proud of.